A very good evening and a warm welcome to everyone present here today. I am Koel Ray and with me is Ishani Sengupta. And today we are going to be your moderators for this webinar and virtual tour series on behalf of the Directorate of Archaeology and Museums, Government of Gujarat. This concept is a result of our Honorable Additional Chief Secretary of the Sports, Culture and Youth Activities Department, Shri C.V. Soam's forethought, and our Director of Archaeology and Museums, Dr. Pankaj Sharma, has entrusted us with the organization of this program. The Burmese gong, ladies and gentlemen. This is the prime artifact that we have in the Great Museum. It is a Burmese gong with a mallet kept in a display case. This is carved out of sandalwood in a symmetrical manner and is an excellent, delicate piece. The gong is resting on a base of two elephants, both with a beautiful facial feature, as you will see later. This piece is from Rangoon, Burma, now known as Myanmar. The gong is a circular metal plate, like percussion instrument, usually having a turned-down rim. In most forms, it is struck in the center with a felt or leather-covered beater, also known as a mallet, producing a sound of either definite or indefinite pitch. Its vibrations issue from the center, in contrast to bells, which vibrate principally at the rim. Gongs were used by ancient psychotherapists for healing and existential fears of individuals in a kind of sonic cleansing through the use of sustained pulsing tones. This is the beautiful Kuftigiri work on the metal part of the gong. Gongs were also used in ancient days to announce the time of peaceful cooperation after a war ended and the appearance of a spiritual royalty. Note the expressions on the face of the elephant. The entire thing is carved out of sandalwood. A very delicate piece indeed. The masterpiece of the great India room. The Burmese gong, ladies and gentlemen. This is a wooden folding screen, inlaid with reliefs of the 8 immortals, as they are called, Pasien, and also there are auspicious inscriptions in jade letters. This is made of mother of pearl and other semi-precious stones, and this screen is from China, 18th century CE. Folding screens are a type of freestanding furniture and consist of several panels or frames connected to each other. They have many practical and decorative uses and can be made from different materials which come in a variety of styles. Folding screens originated in ancient China, and written references date them from around the 4th century BCE during the Han Dynasty. But they were probably used earlier. They were initially used as room separators and were not meant to be moved around frequently. The first Chinese folding screens were made of wooden panels and were decorated with beautiful art. Scenes from life in the palace, mythological themes, and elements of nature were painted on these panels, making them more than just a piece of furniture. Here we see the 8 immortals from the Chinese mythology who are believed to know the secrets of nature. They represent separately a male, a female, the old, the young, the rich, the noble, the poor, and the humble Chinese. Each immortal's power can be transferred to a tool of power associated with a certain meaning that can give life or destroy evil. Together, these 8 tools are called the hidden 8 immortals or covert 8 immortals. Please enjoy. This is a large curtain called the Kalaga. Here scenes are depicted from a Burmese legend. The Kalaga is a traditional name for embroidered tapestries from Myanmar, earlier known as Burma. This style comes from the Mandalay region and the tradition goes back more than a century. They are generally made from linen, silk, velvet and cotton adorned with plain and metallic threads, metal sequins, beads, and glass pieces. Kalagas commonly depict stories from the Jataka, which is the Buddha's journey towards enlightenment, and the Hindu epic Ramayana, which talks about the journey of King Rama, as well as the historical scenes, auspicious animals, and signs of the zodiac. Like the decorations you might see in an ornate Buddhist Burmese temple, The lagas are awash in colorful and shiny details. Here we see figurines of the Buddha, a frame made of ivory, and a beautiful fan. This is a hand-painted fan. Typologically, it was adopted from the Chinese style of painting. The painting shows a scene of a royal procession. This particular piece here has been brought from Rangoon, Burma, now Myanmar. The dragon armlets worn by dancers, Javanese dancers, and a few sculptures of the Buddha. This is a Buddhist manuscript. It was written in black lacquer and illustrated in red color on gold-plated copper sheets. This piece belongs to the 18th or 19th century. A case made of silver for the preservation of the Buddhist Ipitaka, decorated with beautiful floral embossed relief, dated to the 18th or 19th century. This is a miniature throne with the seated statue of a Buddhist priest. This object has carved and gilded woodwork. Delicate carving of floral geometrical designs, anthropomorphic figures, and dragons make this a masterpiece. And no surprise, this came from Burma or Myanmar, 19th century. This is a palm leaf manuscript of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which was written in Sinhalese script. The source of this object goes back to Kandy of Ceylon or modern-day Sri Lanka. It dates back to the 18th or 19th century. The Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta is the very first teaching ever presented by the Buddha. It occurred a few weeks after Siddhartha Gautam awakened and gained full human maturity or complete understanding of the human life experience. For a few weeks after his awakening, Siddhartha carefully considered if it was possible to teach to others his profound understanding of the nature of suffering or dukkha arising due to wrong views of self or anatta within an impermanent, ever-changing environment, anicca. This sculpture came from Bali. This is a demon guardian figure or a dwarpal found from the outside of a temple in Bali and belongs to the 19th century CE. A dwarpal is usually portrayed as an armed, fearsome guardian looking like a demon. The sculpture is from Java and Bali, and usually they are carved from andesite, portraying dwarpals as fearsome giants with rather bulky physique in a semi-kneeling position. This is a wooden sculpture denoting the fish incarnation or the Matsya avatar of Lord Vishnu. This is actually a primitive style of sculpture, and this is originally from Bali. Matsya avatar was one amongst the 10 incarnations of Lord Vishnu. The story of Prince Panji and of Princess Kalu is depicted on this beautiful painted cloth. These cloths were used as decoration in the house cornices on festival occasions. This piece is from Bali, Indonesia. This concludes our journey of the Greater India Room, and we will proceed to the Japanese gallery next. A wooden chest of drawers. This is a big metallic bowl that we can see in the first showcase itself. There are several boxes on display. We will see one in a little bit of detail now. We can see trays, boxes, as well as some bowls and plates here, and a beautiful bullock cart. The frame on the right hand side is made of lacquered wood, depicting bamboo grooves and two cranes. This is the beautiful tortoise shell box, which shows a floral design. It is actually made of tortoise carapace, which is the upper part of the tortoise shell, while the plastron is the lower part. And let me amaze you all. Tortoise shell is actually composed of keratin, the same protein that our hair is made of. This picture frame is made of horn, the horns of an animal, and it can show beautiful fine golden detailing of a bird and tree branches full of blooming sakura or the cherry blossoms flowers. This is the one made of wood that we had seen earlier. The old Japanese currency, some of which we can see is made of mother of pearl. We'll also come to this later. These are the Japanese dolls, the typical dolls presented in Hina Matsuri, also known as the Japanese Doll Festival or Girls' Day. It is celebrated on March 3rd every year. Hina are the special dolls used for the occasion, and Matsuri is the Japanese word for a festival or holiday. Families and communities wish health and happiness for all the girls on this special day. Hina dolls are typically a gift from a girl's grandparents for her first Hina Matsuri, or she may receive a set that has been passed down in her family. The dolls are beautifully detailed and represent the royal court. Starting weeks before the festival, families display the dolls on a tiered stand called the Hinadan that is covered with red cloth. The stand may have 5 or 7 tiers, with the top tier reserved for the emperor and the empress, followed by guardians, musicians, and servants. The display also includes small meal dishes, small furniture pieces like chests and stands, and fresh peach blossoms. Everything is to be put away quickly after March 3rd. Otherwise, according to legend, the girls in the family will marry late. Traditional food and drinks are an important part of the celebration also. Some beautiful figurines that depict everyday life. These are carved out of ivory. We can also see a giant crab and these grotesque figures of skeletons. The beautiful vases. This is a picture book, which we will see in greater detail later. The animal tray, another beautiful tray made of mother of pearl in the shape of a sunflower decorated with designs of flowers, a moth and butterfly. This particular doll is of Jingu, also known as Jingu Kogu or Okinaga Tarashihime no Mikoto, a semi-legendary empress regent of Japan who is said to have established Japanese hegemony over Korea. According to the traditional records of ancient Japan, Jingu was the wife of Chuai, the 14th sovereign who reigned from 192 to 200 CE. Abiding by a pair of divine jewels that allowed her to control the tides, she is said to have begun her bloodless conquest of Korea in 200 CE, the year in which her husband died. According to legend, her unborn son Ojin, later deified as Hachiman, the god of war, remained in her womb for 3 years, giving her time to complete the conquest and return to Japan. Although the traditional chronology of the period is doubtful, and many of the deeds ascribed to Jingu are undoubtedly fictitious, it is certain that by the 4th century CE, the Japanese had established some control over southern Korea. There is no way of verifying the existence of a specific empress named Jingu, but it is thought that a matriarchal society existed in Japan, Western Japan, during this period. Please note the elaborate hairstyle of the empress. saw earlier, the hairstyles of these Japanese women were elaborately made using wooden combs dipped in hot molten wax, which is why they could not risk ruining them so easily and make another visit to the expensive hairdresser. Hence, such neck rests were common practice to maintain the hairstyle for a considerable period of time. The beautiful picture book, ladies and gentlemen. The first picture shows Empress Shingo. This beautiful collection has several paintings in its store, which we are especially showcasing in this webinar only for you. The vibrant colors produce a long-lasting impact in one's artistic mind. And of course, it's not just the paintings. It also shows the culture, the dress, the hairstyles, physical features, seasonal flowers, and all other minute to wide aspects of Japanese life are portrayed within these paintings. It is true that art is not any other aspect of human life. It is actually the mirror which reflects a socio-cultural whole. This is an oyster shell made out of ivory which depicts a fishing scene. It is said that dress communicates ideas about an individual's self that mirror time and society. One's identity may be revealed through body modification, supplements, and often most explicitly through apparel. Here we have the kimono, which conveys a multitude of meanings through sleeve length, silhouette, and shape, fashioning of necklines, color, motif selection, etc. In Japan, the variety of colors, materials, techniques, and motifs used in their traditional garments, more so than varied cut and construction, indicate gender, class, and status. Motifs in the kimono often have auspicious significance, which come from religious and popular beliefs. For example, the dot motif is also a very symbolic one. It was found to represent stars in the Yoruba culture, which further represent human souls on earth. When the star is no longer observed, a human soul is believed to have died. Accordingly, the dot represents transformation and transcendence of worldly entities with otherworldly forces. The star like connotation also connects back to the dot's messages of light and blessing. Thus, the simple dot is connected to the spiritual points of brightness and symbols of the rebirth and transformation of a human soul. The kimono in English means a wearing thing. Straight cuts of fabric were sewn together to create a garment that fit every sort of body shape. The kimono's earliest ancestor was developed around the 8th century, and because of its longevity, it heralds as the national dress of Japan. Here we have the kimono. This is the statue of the Bodhidharma, or the Japanese Daruma, which flourished in the 6th century CE. He is a Buddhist monk who, according to tradition, is credited with establishing the Zen branch of Mahayana Buddhism. The accounts of Bodhidharma's life are largely legendary, and historical sources are practically non existent. But two very brief contemporary accounts disagree on his age, one claiming that he was 150 years old, while the other depicts him as much younger. The first biography of Bodhidharma was a brief text written by the Chinese monk Dao Zhuan about a century after his death. As his legend grew, Bodhidharma was credited with the teaching that meditation was a return to the Buddha's precepts. He came to be regarded as the first patriarch of the tradition that was subsequently known as Chan in China, Zen in Japan, Son in Korea, Tien in Vietnam. All these names correspond to the pronunciation of the Sanskrit word dhyana or meditation in Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Vietnamese, respectively. Bodhidharma was also considered to be the 28th Indian patriarch in a direct line of transmission from the Buddha. The wooden sculpture of a sword fighter. Neo, the guardian deities at the entrance of a Buddhist temple. This is made out of wood. The Japanese katana. The Japanese katana, the katana is the long sword and the wakizashi is the short sword kept beside it. These were the primary weapons of the samurai from the beginning of the Aizushi Momoyama period to the end of the 19th century. Traditionally, only the samurai were permitted to wear both as a dare show, but for practical purposes and due to a number of rules prohibiting the wearing of certain weapons in the presence of higher ranking samurai, many chose to keep only the short wakizashi or tanto within arm's length at all times for self defense. The use of the katana was therefore reserved solely for open conflicts between the samurai and in times of war. The forging of the shinsakuto katana blades is carried out now much in the same manner as it was in the days of feudal Japan. Each blade possesses a number of unique metallurgical and mechanical properties that are of particular interest from a scientific point of view. The samurai always strove to achieve a perfect balance in their lives. While fierce warriors in times of war and times of peace, many practiced arts such as poetry and painting. This ideology was reflected in the quality and beauty of their weapons. A Shinsakuto katana is not only a weapon of art, weapon of war, but also a work of art. Therefore, a number of aesthetic qualities dramatically influence the value of each blade in addition to its prowess on the battlefield. Some of the more obvious features of a katana are the shape, size, and design of the weapon, and a properly forged katana should give an overall impression of either graceful elegance or overwhelming power, according to the length, width, and degree of curvature of the blade. Here we see a superb painted wooden sculpture of Jizo Bosatsu or Jizo Bosatao. In the 6th century CE, Buddhism was probably the first introduced into Japan by Chinese and Korean immigrants. Soon thereafter, a Korean king presented to the Japanese emperor a Buddha image, ceremonial objects, as well as Buddhist scriptures in Chinese. In Mahayana Buddhism, a bodhisattva intentionally gives up the attainment of enlightenment in order to alleviate the suffering of mankind. Bodhisattvas are worshipped in Japan. The earthworm form of the Buddha, the Jizo Bosatsu, is popular in Japan. He is represented as a monk with a closely shaven head, holding a staff and a jewel. According to Japanese beliefs, Jizo Bosatsu fills the vacancy created after the Nirvana of Gautam Buddha. He is considered to be the guardian of children, patron of travelers, and the savior of those who are troubled. He is a popular object of worship in Zen temples, and his images are also found as wayside shrines by roadsides, near riverbanks, and under the shade of trees. beautiful Satsuma pottery, or the Satsuma vase. An ink painting. The Satsuma vase, or the Satsuma ware, was a very desirable pottery produced in Japan. The original artisans that produced Satsuma pottery were not, in fact, from the Satsuma province. In fact, they were not even Japanese. They were Korean prisoners who were captured by the invading forces of Toyotomi Hideyoshi, the then ruler of Japan, during his ill-fated invasion of the Korean peninsula in the late 16th century. In this invasion, Toyotomi sent representatives from all the daimyo that served him, including a delegation from the Satsuma province, which in 1597 conquered the Korean province of Northern Chola. In that time, the culture around the tea ceremony was already so significant, and the renown of the Korean potters so ubiquitous back in Japan, that the first action undertaken by the invading Satsuma army was to seize all the local potters in the region and forcibly relocate them back to Japan. These displaced Korean artisans eventually assimilated with their captors' local culture, and for the next few centuries throughout the Edo period, worked hard to reproduce the conditions needed to create their art. The local lords restricted the sale of the best Satsuma pottery, limiting the sale of white pieces to the aristocracy. The renown of the Satsuma pottery kilns spread far and wide throughout the country. While the Japanese Satsuma vase is one of the most popular objects in the field, any work from this period tends to be quite valuable today. And while some workshops like the Taizan, the Kinkozan continue to produce works late into the 19th century, such works are exceedingly rare and very precious, generally found in museums or in personal collections. This is actually a writing table. Yes, a writing desk. It consists of a beautiful intarsia decoration done with mother of pearl, lacquer, and even gold pigment. It shows a beautiful landscape in the center. One can see bridges, a procession, and even a party of people who appear to be playing some sort of a game. The earliest forms of such low tables are documented in medieval hand scroll paintings. Most are undecorated and have shorter legs, but this one is highly decorated, as we can all see. The size and shape of the writing table became standardized in the Muromachi period and remained unchanged throughout the Edo period. This showcase highlights the metal cast objects, which include animal figurines, fighting samurai, bronze figures of Sho and Uba, etc. The mother tortoise with her small children. This is the statue of the bronze samurai. Samurai is a member of the Japanese warrior caste, and the term samurai was originally used to denote the aristocratic warriors or the bushi, but it came to apply to all the members of the warrior class that rose to power in the 12th century and dominated the Japanese government until the Meiji Restoration in 1868. This here is the bronze image of a samurai fighting with a sword in his hand, preferably the katana. Note the beautiful detailing of all the various feathers on the body of the peacock. Here we come to the bronze figures of the legendary Sho and Uba. The Takasako legend is a very old legend in Japanese mythology, which talks about an old couple, a man named Sho and his wife Uba, together known as Jotomba, who are said to appear from the mist at Lake Takasako. The old man and his wife are usually portrayed talking happily together with a pine tree in the background, signifying a happy couple in perfect harmony until they grow old together. They have long been a symbol of happiness or family life. His pine tree is also called the pine of Suminoi, and hers is called the Takasako pine. The old woman is using a broom to sweep away trouble, and the man carries a rake to rake in good fortune. In Japanese wedding ceremonies, the Takasako song is recited, and the Takasako figures are put on a special island shelf called the Shimdai, together with auspicious pine, bamboo, plum, and crane, with turtle decorations placed in the wedding room and presented to the bridal couple. Moving on to more beautiful Japanese ceramics. Here we have the Nanking vase, which is known as Kutani porcelain. Kutani is a type of Japanese porcelain made in the Kaga province, now in Ishikawa prefecture. The name Old Kutani refers to a porcelain decorated with heavily applied overglaze enamels and produced in the Kaga mountain village of Kutani. The powerful Maeda family had established a kiln there by 1656. The clay bodies used were grey and coarse grained. On most pieces, dishes, and bowls, these were especially common: a white or blue-white matte glaze, which was decorated in dark, restrained colors, initially greens, yellows, and some reds, and later on, purples and dark blues were used. Some items had cobalt blue decoration under a white glaze. The most noted old Kutani pieces are the green Kutani, in which most of the surface is covered in a green or blue-green glaze, to which one or two colors have been added. The bold designs of the Kutani ware drew freely from the Chinese ceramics, paintings, and textiles. They are renowned for their rich pictorial ornament executed in lively, intense lines. Coming back to the Japanese currency. The old Japanese coins were made of pure gold. The ones we see here, some are made of mother of pearl, and we'll move on to those made of metal. The Japanese coins were made of pure gold, pure silver, and copper mainly, and weights ranged from 2 to 17 grams. Some of the coins in the display are also known as mon, and mon was a currency used in Japan in the Muromachi period before the beginning of the Meiji period. This may surprise you, but it is actually an embroidery piece, a Nikko embroidery. It shows the funeral shrine of the Tokugawa shoguns. It depicts the beautiful Karaman temple, and you can see the lanterns underneath. The Karaman is actually a type of gate seen in the Japanese architecture It's characterized by the karahafu, an undulating bargeboard peculiar to Japan. Karamon often used at the entrances of Japanese castles, Buddhist temples, and Shinto shrines, and they have been historically seen as a symbol of power. Please note the lanterns here. This is the same as the lantern depicted in the beautiful embroidery. We can see beautiful motifs here. Bells hanging. Mythological creatures are depicted on the sides. This is made of bronze. The leaves may be palm leaf motifs. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes our tour of the Japanese gallery of the Baroda Museum and Picture Gallery. We have a short teaser for you, after which I'll be opening the floor for the question and answer. This is from the European Picture Art Gallery. Catherine of Braganza. The famous Corona painting. Ladies and gentlemen, let this be a trailer and a teaser to remind you to tune in with us next Sunday for another episode from the Baroda Museum and Picture Gallery. Thank you very much.